I've always hated silence, especially at night, when the world quiets just enough for your own mind to scream louder than anything outside. Maybe that's why I started sleeping with background noise. Podcasts, rain sounds, anything to muffle the whispers of my own memory. That night, it was almost 3 a.m., and I was half asleep, the static of some late-night radio humming through my cheap Bluetooth speaker, when my phone buzzed against the wooden nightstand. I wouldn't have checked it. Normally, I ignore late notifications like most people ignore guilt. But something about the vibration felt different, like it was meant for me. I grabbed it. One message. Unknown number. No photo. No contact name. Just 7 words. You still dream of the attic, don't you? I stared at the screen, heart pounding, as something ice cold slithered down my spine. Not just fear, but recognition. That dream. The one I used to have every night as a kid. The attic, the scratching sounds, the locked box under the floorboards I was never allowed to open. But no one knew about it. Not my parents, not the therapist they sent me to after the incident, not even my ex, and she once read my journals out of spite. It was a private nightmare, buried under years of denial and medication, the kind of thing you lie to yourself about until it stops being a memory and becomes a myth. And now, somehow, a stranger had reached into that dark place and pulled it out clean, sharp, and real. My hands were shaking, and before I could even process what was happening, another buzz jolted the phone in my grip. A second message lit up the screen. Don't ignore me again, or I'll remind you why you're afraid of the dark. I don't remember dropping the phone, but I must have, because it landed screen down with a soft thud and slid across the floor like it couldn't wait to get away from me. The lights in my apartment flickered, just once, and the static from the speaker changed pitch, like a signal was breaking through. My mouth went dry. I stood up, slowly, listening for footsteps, breath, anything. I live alone. At least, I thought I did. Then the hallway light, motion activated, flashed on by itself, even though I hadn't moved. And that's when I saw it. On the floor, just outside my bedroom door, something had been slipped underneath the threshold. A piece of paper, torn at the edges, written in red ink, almost like it had been smeared rather than pinned. I picked it up with trembling fingers, unfolding it inch by inch, already knowing what it would say. And when I read it, everything inside me turned to glass. You left me in the attic. I never left you. It didn't stop after the first night. I woke up the next morning half hoping it had all been some vivid hallucination, the kind that leaves a residue of dread but fades into disbelief as the day unfolds. But when I rolled over and checked my phone, there were 6 new messages, all from the same unknown number, all timestamped between 3 o'clock and 3:15 a.m., each one like a scalpel sliding under my skin. One simply read, "You wore the red hoodie that day." Another, "You cried when she bled." It meant nothing to me at first, until the third message made my stomach twist into knots. "You told her you were sorry after they left, but she never got to forgive you." That was when I remembered her, Rachel King, a quiet girl from my sophomore class, the one we used to mock with notes passed in class and cruel laughter in the hallway. She vanished a year later without a trace. It was ruled a runaway, but there were always rumors. Rumors I never took seriously. I hadn't thought of her in years. And yet, here she was, or at least her memory, resurrected through my phone like a ghost with a SIM card. The timing of the messages was the worst part. They didn't come when I was expecting them, not while I was staring at the screen, waiting, hoping, dreading. No, they arrived at moments of stillness, brushing my teeth, walking the grocery aisle, sitting in my car with the engine off but the radio playing static. One appeared during a meeting at work. "Your manager smells like decay." Another buzzed in while I was microwaving dinner. "You shouldn't eat that." He died after the same meal. At first, I thought maybe someone had hacked my phone, maybe installed spyware or some kind of insane prank app, but the more I looked into it, the less sense it made. There was no trace of the number, no contact logs, no delivery history on the carrier's end. The messages were just there, like they had written themselves. I factory reset the phone. The messages returned. I changed numbers. The messages followed. I started checking every camera in the apartment, every hidden corner, thinking someone was watching, someone close, someone inside. But there was nothing. No cameras. No bugs. No footprints. Just me. And them. That's when it happened. I was pacing the living room, mumbling to myself, trying to piece it all together out loud like people do in the movies when they're on the edge of cracking something big. I said, and I remember this perfectly, "This has to be someone from school. Someone who knows about Rachel. Someone who," and right then, before I even finished the sentence, my phone buzzed. I froze. My skin prickled like it was being bitten by 1,000 invisible needles. I picked up the phone slowly, already knowing what I'd see. The message glared back at me. "It's not about Rachel. It's about you. You just haven't remembered yet." I dropped the phone again, but this time I didn't hear it hit the ground, because right behind me, I heard a voice, whispering my name. In my voice, I started noticing the glitches 3 days after the last message, tiny things at first, so subtle I could almost write them off as stress-induced hallucinations, the kind that bloom in the corners of your eyes when you haven't slept properly in weeks. But they kept happening, and they kept getting worse. It began with the lights flickering not just when I entered a room, but blinking in time with the notifications on my phone, as if every buzz pulsed through the walls and rewired the electricity itself. Then came the TV, which turned itself on in the middle of the night with no remote nearby, displaying static and faint whispering that grew louder the longer I watched. But the moment that truly snapped my reality in half happened in the bathroom, while brushing my teeth under the harsh white glow of the overhead bulb. I looked into the mirror, foam in my mouth, and noticed something off. My reflection was slower, not frozen, but lagging, just a split second behind, like it was buffering in real time. I tested it, waving one hand slowly, then snapping my fingers. The image copied the movement, not immediately, but with a mechanical delay. I leaned in, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out of my body, and watched as my own face tilted slightly before I moved. At that point, I should have left, walked out, driven somewhere, anywhere. But something made me stay. I wanted to believe it was curiosity or stubbornness, but the truth is uglier. I was becoming addicted to the fear. There was a perverse clarity in it, a silence beneath the noise, as if some other part of me was awakening. I went to bed around 2:30 a.m., the bedroom as dark and quiet as a grave, and lay motionless on my back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. That's when the phone buzzed again, a single vibration, longer than usual, like it wanted to be felt as much as heard. I picked it up and immediately regretted doing so. It wasn't a message. It was a photo. A grainy, dimly lit image of me, asleep in bed, taken from the foot of the mattress. The sheets were folded over my chest exactly the way they were now. My right arm was bent under the pillow just like it was now. The worst part? My eyes were slightly open in the picture, and I could see the shadow of someone standing just outside the frame, barely visible, just a sliver of darkness closer to me than I would have ever allowed. I scrambled upright, tossed the phone across the room, and turned on every light I could find, my heart threatening to shatter my ribs from the inside. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't even close my eyes. I sat in the corner of the room with a kitchen knife in my hand and a trembling silence in my chest, trying to convince myself I wasn't being watched. But right before sunrise, when the first silver hint of dawn painted my blinds, something happened that I still can't explain without every hair on my body standing up. I heard the sound, that high-pitched ding I had come to dread, the same one that accompanied every message from the unknown number, except this time, it didn't come from my phone. It came from inside my closet. Not near it, not outside it, from inside it. The ding repeated once more, louder this time, sharper, like a knife scraping glass. And then something knocked, once, hard, from the other side of the door. I don't remember moving. I don't remember breathing. But I do remember the new message that lit up my phone on the floor, now glowing brightly in the darkened corner of the room. One new notification. One new line of text. It read, "We're closer than you think. Open the door." I didn't open the closet. Not that night. I sat there frozen, still clutching the knife, staring at the door as if my stare alone could hold it shut. I told myself the sound was a fluke, a coincidence, a failing speaker, a sick trick of a tired mind. But I knew that something was on the other side. Something that had already been inside the room before. Something that could get in again whenever it wanted. I left the apartment at dawn, wandered through the city aimlessly, unable to remember the route I took or the people I passed. I just needed distance, even if that distance was only psychological. I tossed the phone in a sewer grate near the park. No backups, no cloud, no more numbers. Just a dumb piece of glass and metal swallowed by the dark. I told myself it was over. I told myself I was safe. I even told myself I'd imagined most of it. Stress, isolation, some kind of breakdown maybe. That was until I got to work the next day and booted up my desktop. I wasn't even logged in yet when the speakers let out a hiss of static, followed by a voice I hadn't heard in over a decade. My father's voice, only it wasn't quite him. It was wrong, slurred, too deep, as though played on tape that had been warped in the heat. He'd been dead for 12 years, buried in a different state, and yet here he was, whispering my childhood nickname through company speakers. "Benny boy, you remember what you did, don't you?" I yanked the power cord out of the wall, sending sparks across the floor, heart hammering so violently I thought I might vomit. Everyone around me froze, staring at me like I'd just set off a bomb. I muttered something, a lie, a joke, anything, and stumbled out of the office before they could ask questions I didn't have answers to. I got home and turned everything off. Lights, internet, breaker switches, everything. I sat in the dark with no devices near me, no wires, no signals. But as I passed the TV on the way to the bathroom, it powered on. Black screen, white text. No source, no input, just a line of words floating in silence. "You're still trying to run." Then it started speaking again, a new voice this time. My mother's. Softer, more subtle, but warped the same way, with a delay between each syllable as if something else was learning how to speak through her. I covered my ears, but it didn't matter. The voice was inside now, not in the room, in me. That night, I couldn't sleep, not even with every light in the apartment blazing and my front door barricaded with furniture. Every hour, on the hour, a new voice message appeared in my email inbox. No sender, no subject line, just the playback icon. One after another, they paraded through the dead. My grandfather, my old babysitter, even my ex from college who I hadn't spoken to in years. All whispering fragmented phrases I had never told anyone, private things I had thought silently, things no one had ever heard but me. At 2:59 a.m., there was silence again, a full minute of it. I sat curled on the couch, unable to move, phone across the room like a live grenade, my breath held for so long it hurt. Then it came, not a message, not a call, just a simple notification. One line, 5 words. "Look outside, Benny boy." I don't know why I obeyed. Maybe I was too scared not to. I walked to the front door, hands numb, opened it slowly, as if afraid the air itself would bite me. And lying there, placed neatly on the doormat like a newspaper delivery, was a single photograph, an old, slightly bent Polaroid. It showed my mother's gravestone, but there was something different. The date etched beneath her name, it wasn't her death date. It was today's. I hadn't spoken to Josh in over 12 years before he reached out last week. An unexpected Facebook message that felt more like a tremor before a quake than a friendly reconnection. "Man, I was just thinking about that time in the woods. Remember the attic thing?" It hit me like a steel pipe to the back of the head. No one had brought that up in years. No one should have. We chatted briefly, awkwardly, surface-level stuff at first. Life updates, failed marriages, jobs that led nowhere, cities we'd passed through like ghosts. But there was tension underneath it, like both of us were circling a deeper topic neither dared to name. That attic, that summer, that thing we both decided never to speak of again. When I asked him if anything strange had happened lately, just to test the waters, he didn't reply right away. But the next morning, I woke to a single message from him, timestamp 2:44 a.m. It said, "You were right. It followed me too." That was the last thing he ever said. 2 hours later, he was found dead in his apartment. No forced entry. No signs of trauma. The cause listed as cardiac arrest. But I saw the photo his sister posted before the police had it scrubbed. His eyes were wide open, mouth frozen in a scream. And written in jagged red ink across the bedroom mirror were the words, "You left the door open." I didn't go to the funeral. I couldn't. I stayed inside for 3 days, curtains drawn, lights off, barely eating, barely moving, every surface in my apartment littered with scribbled notes and disconnected cables. I started questioning everything, not just recent events, but my whole damn life. Memories from childhood came back in flashes, not full scenes, just snapshots. My dad screaming at someone who wasn't there, my mother burning photographs in the sink, Josh and I in that attic, chanting something stupid we found in a notebook behind a wall. At least, I thought it was a notebook. My therapist used to say I dissociated as a kid, that I'd buried trauma under layers of imagined horror. But what if it wasn't imagined? What if I hadn't made anything up, but instead, unmade it to survive? The messages had stopped for almost 48 hours after Josh died, and for a moment I let myself believe it was over, that maybe, somehow, his death had satisfied whatever this thing was. But deep down, I knew better. I could feel it watching again. Not from the shadows, From inside, like a parasite curling up in my spine, waiting. It returned with a sound file. Not a text, not a photo, a voice message. The subject line was blank, just a black icon pulsing against the white screen. I tapped it. There was a short burst of static, then a low gurgling breath, like someone drowning underwater. Then it started screaming, high-pitched, ragged, inhuman, yet unmistakably familiar. It was my father's voice. Not as I remembered it, but as I'd heard it once, just once, the night he died in our house. Except this time, there was something else layered beneath the scream, a whisper that looped quietly in the background, like a chant or a prayer spoken in reverse. I couldn't make it out at first, but I played it again, and again, louder, slower, until the whisper resolved itself into a single word. My name, over and over, over and over. Ben. Ben. Benny boy, open your eyes. I hadn't been back there since the day we moved out, the house on Richmond Hill, that old, crumbling place tucked behind rows of half-dead trees and overgrown hedges, where the silence always felt heavier than the walls. It had been sold 3 times since then, and stood abandoned now, rotting quietly at the edge of town like something people forgot on purpose. I parked across the street, engine still running, as if a part of me was still hoping I'd lose the nerve and drive away. But I didn't. I walked up the same cracked path I used to ride my bike on, every footstep louder than it should have been, the wind pushing against me like it didn't want me there. The front door was unlocked. Not just open, unlocked, like something inside had been waiting. The smell hit me first. Not dust or mildew, but something deeper, like wet iron and burnt paper, like time had turned sour and left a stain no one could clean. I made my way up the stairs, my eyes locked on the attic door at the end of the hall, half expecting it to vanish like it sometimes did in my dreams. But it was real, just as I remembered. I stood there, hand hovering over the rusted handle, until the phone buzzed again in my pocket, just once. A message. No number. Just 4 words that made my skin tighten like a closing fist. Welcome back, Benny boy. I opened the attic door and stepped inside. The air was dense and choking, and the room hadn't changed in 2 decades. There were still broken toys on the floor, scraps of old newspapers, and a rocking chair that hadn't rocked since the night my father swore it moved by itself. And there, in the far corner, hidden beneath a sheet of warped plywood, I found what I didn't even know I was looking for, a shoebox wrapped in black twine, the kind of box you instinctively know you're not supposed to open. Inside was a journal, the pages yellowed and brittle, filled with cramped, frantic handwriting that mirrored the text I'd been receiving, exactly the same loops and slashes, the same twisted phrasing, like it had been written by someone trying to sound human. Tucked beneath it was an old cassette recorder, its buttons rusted, but still functional. I pressed play. The sound that came through wasn't static, it was chanting. Children's voices, including mine, repeating a name over and over again. A name I'd forgotten. A name I'd forced out of my memory like a virus. The lights flickered. The recorder clicked off by itself. Another message appeared, this time a voice memo. I played it. It wasn't a stranger's voice. It was my own. A child version of me, whispering, please don't go. We still need you. We haven't finished the game. I stumbled back, dizzy, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. I looked down at the journal again and flipped through the last few pages. Drawings of a symbol I didn't recognize, crude sketches of the attic, and one phrase repeated in thick, pressed ink. We opened the door. We let it in. The final page had a sticky note attached, written in the same handwriting, only this time in red. You didn't forget. You buried it. I turned away, ready to run, to never look back, when the phone buzzed once more. A video file. No subject. No label. I hit play. The screen lit up with grainy footage, and there I was, a child, sitting in the middle of the attic floor, surrounded by candles, holding the same journal in my lap. Josh was there too, along with 2 other boys I could barely recognize anymore. We were chanting, smiling, laughing, drawing something on the floor in what looked like ash. And then, at the very end of the clip, the camera turned slowly, shakily, as if held by invisible hands, toward the corner of the attic, where something else was standing. Tall, watching, waiting. Another message popped up instantly. I'm not a stranger. You called me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just afraid, I was remembering. Not in fragments or flashes, but whole scenes rising up from the abyss of my childhood like corpses bloated from years underwater. After watching that video, seeing my younger self cross-legged in the attic, Voice light and eager as I recited words I couldn't have possibly understood, something broke open in me. The journal hadn't just been some creepy artifact I stumbled on. It was ours. Mine, Josh's, the others. A group of kids playing with darkness like it was a board game. The journal had a page near the center marked with deep clawed lines, over and over, the paper nearly torn from sheer repetition. At the top, written in capital red ink, was a name I hadn't seen before, but instantly knew had been waiting for me to speak it again. Oxial. Underneath it, in childlike scrawl. To call it, you must give a fear. To feed it, you must forget. And suddenly I could see it, that summer day, the heat of the attic, the circle drawn in candle wax, and each of us whispering into a paper cup what scared us most. Mine had been the attic itself. Josh feared drowning. One of the other boys, Evan, confessed to seeing things in mirrors that weren't him. I remembered laughing. We all did. Because it was a game. A story. We didn't really believe anything would happen. Not then. But something did happen. That much is undeniable now. I dug through old yearbooks, old group photos, anything I could get my hands on. Josh was gone, obviously. Evan, he died in a psychiatric hospital at 19 after gouging out both his eyes. Chris, the fourth kid in the ritual, had vanished in his 20s after telling coworkers someone was watching him from inside his own reflection. And me? I forgot. I locked it all away, stuffed it down so deep it took 20 years and a string of deaths to remember what we'd done. But now it's all resurfacing in dreams, in voices, in those awful messages that no longer feel like intrusions, but more like reminders. I wasn't targeted at random. I wasn't chosen. I invited it in. And the more I recall, the more I realize, the fear isn't just mine anymore. It's been feeding, growing, evolving with me. Every memory I buried has made it stronger. Every scream I ignored has made it bolder. Every person it takes is part of a payment that began long before I understood what I owed. And worst of all, I think I signed up willingly. That thought alone nearly broke me. Tonight, I received another video file. This time, there was no warning, no message, no number, just the flickering notification in the corner of my screen while the lights in my apartment dimmed to nothing. I clicked play with fingers like ice. The footage was grainier than before, darker, like it had decayed digitally over time. It showed me again, the attic again, the same circle. But this time, I wasn't just repeating words. I was smiling. And my voice wasn't mine anymore. It had changed, deepened, echoing even though the room was silent. Behind me, just on the edge of the frame, something began to take shape, a tall figure, shivering in and out of existence, faceless but familiar. At the very end of the video, I turned toward the camera and said one final thing in a voice that chilled me to my core. We made a pact, and it remembers. The first time I heard my own voice coming from a message I didn't record, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because my brain didn't know what else to do with that level of existential panic. The audio file arrived around 3:17 a.m., named only listen.mp3. I played it on instinct, even though my hands were already trembling, and the moment it started, the blood drained from my body like a sink unplugged. It was me, not just my voice, but the exact tone I use when I talk to myself in the mirror, when I think out loud late at night. But I wasn't saying anything I remembered ever speaking. The message was slow, deliberate, and filled with an unnatural edge I couldn't recognize. You keep forgetting that I was first. That was it. Just one line. But it didn't feel like a message, it felt like a warning. The next night, I woke up barefoot on the shoulder of a dark, empty highway 20 miles outside the city with no memory of how I got there. My phone had 3 new sent messages, all written by me, all to numbers I didn't recognize, all in the same twisted language from the journal. Each one ended with the same phrase. He doesn't want to give it up. When I checked my GPS history, I found several strange destinations logged between 1 and 4 a.m. the night before. An abandoned hospital, a cemetery I haven't been to since my mother's funeral, and the woods behind my childhood home. My shoes were caked in dirt. My hands smelled faintly of ash. My mouth tasted like iron. I hadn't just walked in my sleep. Something was piloting me. I tried texting back. I know how insane that sounds, but it didn't feel like I had a choice. I messaged the number that had sent me my own voice, hands shaking, breath shallow. I wrote, "What do you want from me?" The reply came instantly, like it had been typed before I even finished hitting send. "I want back what you stole. I want the fear you promised. You're not supposed to resist." That last sentence echoed in my skull like it was being screamed underwater. I paced my apartment for hours, writing notes to myself on walls. hiding my phone in the freezer, setting alarms on random timers so I could catch myself if I went under again. But none of it worked. The blackouts kept happening, longer now, deeper. I'd wake up with missing clothes, bruises I couldn't explain, and once, a bloody handprint smeared on the inside of my bathroom mirror. But the worst part was what I found on my phone after one of those episodes, a video I'd apparently recorded, where I stared into the camera, motionless, eyes unblinking, voice calm. I said, "You're fighting something that was always meant to win." And then I smiled. Not my smile, not the crooked, nervous grin I've had since I was a kid. This was something else. Wider, sharper, hungrier. Tonight, the phone buzzed again. Just once, just enough to make my whole body tighten. One new message. Short, final, terrifying in its simplicity. One more betrayal, and I'll take your body permanently. No punctuation, no emotion, just a promise. And I know it means it. I smashed everything. The phone was the first to go, shattered beneath the weight of a hammer I didn't even remember picking up. Then the laptop, the modem, every screen in my apartment, even the microwave, because it had started flashing random numbers at 3:33 a.m. every night, always in perfect silence. I stripped the walls of wiring, tore out my router, and burned the journal in the sink until it crumbled into ash. I wasn't paranoid anymore. I was deliberate. I was done. For 3 days, I lived completely off-grid in a one-room cabin I hadn't visited since my father died. Miles from the nearest cell tower, no power, no signals, no noise. But the silence didn't help. In fact, it made it worse. Because even without the devices, the messages kept coming. They appeared carved into the wooden walls at night. Deep claw-like scratches in the grain that spelled out fragments of my own thoughts. I found one scrawled above the bed after waking from a dream I couldn't remember. "You still owe me the rest." Another was written in black soot on the mirror, and there wasn't a fireplace. Every night, I heard whispering inside the cabin, behind the walls, under the floorboards. Sometimes in my voice, sometimes in my father's. Once in a voice that sounded like all of them layered on top of each other, speaking in perfect sync. I started sleepwalking again, waking up standing in corners or outside the cabin completely, barefoot, and freezing in the grass with fresh dirt under my fingernails. One morning, I found a child's drawing pinned to the inside of the door. Stick figures. 4 of them. 3 were scratched out with thick red marker. Only one was left intact, the smallest one, standing inside a circle. The name Oxiel was written beneath it, misspelled and backward like a child might write it. And in that moment, everything came rushing back. Not just the attic, not just the ritual, but why I had done it, why I had wanted to forget. It wasn't just about fear. It was about guilt, something unbearable, something so horrifying I made a deal to bury it. A trade, a pact, a memory given in exchange for silence. That's why the journal had been mine. That's why the entity had my voice. Because I called it, not out of curiosity, but desperation. I begged it to take something from me. And it did. I just never realized what. Until today. The whispering was louder than usual when I woke up this morning. It didn't fade when I opened my eyes. It didn't vanish when I screamed into the emptiness. It only grew stronger when I looked down and saw what had been carved into the wooden floor overnight. A single line etched perfectly, too clean to be human. "You were the one who pushed her." Her. I didn't even need to wonder who. The memory hit me like black lightning. Rachel. Rachel King. The girl who disappeared when we were 12. The girl we bullied. The girl we dared to follow us into the attic. The girl who screamed. The girl who fell. I saw it now. I saw my hand. I saw her foot slip. I saw her head strike the floor. I saw the blood and the silence in the way I backed away, trembling, whispering over and over that it was an accident, that no one could know. And then, I remembered the journal. I remembered the ritual. I remembered the wish I made in the dark. Not for her to come back. Not for forgiveness. I wished to forget. And something heard me. That's why the messages always knew too much. That's why it used my voice. That's why it whispered in my sleep and twisted my face into smiles I didn't recognize. It didn't invade me. It didn't trick me. I gave it permission. And now, all these years later, the last message arrived, not on a screen, not as a notification, but whispered in my ear as I stood frozen in front of the mirror, watching my reflection move before I did. It's time to finish what we started. I haven't left the house in days, not since I finally remembered everything. Not since the last whisper bled into my own thoughts, and I couldn't tell the difference anymore. I've stopped destroying things. There's no point. You can't smash what lies inside you, and you can't silence a voice when it's your own. I've started writing again on the walls, on my arms, on napkins and old receipts, but the words aren't mine, not really. They come from somewhere deeper, somewhere I sealed shut when I was too young to know what I was sacrificing. I used to think Oxiel was a demon, a parasite, some supernatural predator that latched onto me during the ritual and fed on my fear like a leech. But the truth is so much worse. Oxiel wasn't some creature I invited into my life. It was the piece of me I tore off that night in the attic, the part that saw what I did to Rachel, the part that couldn't live with the guilt, the part that refused to grow up with the rest of me. And when I tried to forget, when I begged to forget, I didn't banish that part. I gave it form. I gave it a name. I gave it power. Everything makes sense now. The messages, the voices, the photos, the way the lights always flickered before I remembered something I wasn't supposed to. It wasn't haunting me. It was trying to bring me back, trying to remind me. It wanted to be whole again, but only on its terms. It had grown angry, resentful, a twin locked in the basement for decades, screaming to be heard while I played the role of the victim. All this time, I thought I was being hunted by something other, but I was just looking into a mirror too dirty to reflect what I really am. The sleepwalking, the recordings, the shadows behind me that always turned out to be mine, all of it was a slow unraveling, not of sanity, but of separation. We're not two anymore. And that's what it wanted. That's what it still wants. But I'm not ready to give in. Not completely. Not yet. Tonight, for the first time, I took the phone back out. I charged it. I turned it on. No new messages. Just that blank, black screen, waiting. I opened the chat window, the same one that's followed me through every reset, every number change, every shattered device. My fingers hovered over the screen. And then, I typed the only question that mattered anymore. Do you forgive me? The reply didn't come right away this time. For the first time, the screen stayed silent. Empty. I waited. Minutes passed. The silence deepened. I thought, maybe, I was free. Maybe, by acknowledging the truth, I had finally closed the loop. But then, just as I started to believe it, the screen lit up. One message. No sender. No timestamp. Just one word. No. And then, everything went dark. My lights cut out. My phone screen cracked down the center on its own. The air turned sharp and cold. In the reflection of the black glass, I saw something behind me, not a shadow, not a figure, but a version of me smiling with teeth I don't remember having. And just before the screen went completely black, I heard it. The sound I've grown to dread more than anything else in the world. Ding.